What's up, guys? It's Jesse here from Matt and Apps today with another breakdown video. This time we're going to be breaking down the UFC 263 fights, specifically the prelims, and I'm going to be giving you my picks for each one of these fights. Great card. Even the prelims have some good fights on them. Even the early prelims have some good fights on them. So yeah, let's just get started. Starting off in the heavyweight division, we got Carlos Felipe versus Jack Collier. The Brazilian versus the American. Kind of two guys coming from opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to weight. Felipe used to weigh, I think they said 160 kilos, which is somewhere around 330 pounds. And Collier actually fought at 205 before putting on a ton of weight. Now he's actually a full 264. Both men in their last fight weighed in at 264, so they're right near the top of the heavyweight class. They're both kind of fatter guys, though. It's not like they're big muscular guys. They're both definitely heavier guys. Different styles too. Felipe tends to be more of a striker. He's had really good striking matches. His fight against Tafa was pretty impressive considering Tafa's striking background and that it was basically mostly a boxing fight. They just kind of stood there and boxed each other. His ground game is kind of questionable, which isn't really going to help him against Collier because he's got such good wrestling. I think he was a state champion. He's looking at. We'll break down Felipe first, I guess. 10-1, 2-1 in the UFC, 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach, 26 years old, 264 pounds. Decent striking, questionable ground game, a little overweight. That's basically the way I'd break him down. Collier, on the other hand, 12-5, 4-4 in the UFC, 6'3", 78.5-inch reach, 32 years old, now weighs 264 pounds. He's actually moving up. He moved up from light heavyweight and put on a lot of size to be a heavyweight. He's had some interesting fights because he was out-muscled by Yang in their fight, and that was obviously at 205, which says some things about how he'll do at heavyweight, I think. But against Felipe, I don't know if that'll be a problem just because Felipe likes to strike. And the most impressive fight for me that he had was probably the Yuta fight, just because prior to the Yuta fight, every time we saw him get hurt or pressured, he would wilt. And in the Yuta fight, he got his nose broken really early in the fight, and he didn't wilt. So, he's really shown a new wrinkle in his game since then. That being said, I think one of these guys is a true heavyweight, and the other guy really isn't. And, ironically enough, it's the taller guy that's not the true heavyweight, and I think that's going to show. And I think Felipe will probably pick up the win in this fight. I imagine it'll be a decision, but he might be able to get the knockout because he does have some good striking, and Collier's chin is, questionable. But yeah, that is the breakdown of the heavyweight fight. Moving on to 155 pounds, we have Faraz Ziam versus Luigi Vendramani. Two guys I'm not very familiar with. They're probably the two guys I'm least familiar with on the entire card, other than the one late replacement we'll get to in a minute. But Ziam is 6 foot. He is 11-3, 1-1 in the UFC. Luigi is 5'8", 9-1, 1-1 in the UFC. Very similar records, very similar histories. Third fight for both. Obviously, one's from France, one's from Brazil. Ziam being the Frenchman, Verramini being the Brazilian. Honestly, I don't know too much about these guys, but from the handful of fights I did watch in the lead up to this, the one thing I could say is that Luigi seems to be the more athletic guy, and I think that'll get him the win. But this one I'm not too confident on, just because I'm not really too familiar with either one of these guys. Next up in the 145-pound division, we've got Ben Askren's son, Chase Hooper, fighting Steven Peterson. Both of these guys are American. Hooper is 9-1-1, 3-1 in the UFC, 6'1", 75-inch reach, 21 years old. Steven Peterson is 18-9, 2-4 in the UFC, 5'9", 70-inch reach, and 31 years old. I think this obviously is a step up for Hooper in terms of competition, but at the same time, I think this is kind of a not really a gimme fight per se, but a fight he's expected to win. He's a BJJ Pan Am's champion. He won that, I think, at 17 or 18 years old. It was the Junior Pan Am's. And he is obviously one of the hottest prospects in the division. And he is quite a bit bigger than Peterson. I think they're trying to get him a win against a more seasoned named guy, somebody that'll actually put up a good scrap against him. A guy that's, been around the block a few times. But I think Hooper will get it done. I expect Hooper to win this one. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that other than I'm excited for that fight just because, it seems like this fight is going to be, in some ways, Hooper's coming out party, for maybe more casual fans to get to know him a bit. Especially if a bunch of the fights end early on the main card and they end up throwing that. And, if he can get a quick finish and then a bunch of the fights end early on the main card and he can get tossed in there as filler, that would be great for him. Next up at 155 pounds, we got Matt Frivola of the U.S. versus Terrence McKinney of the U.S. Terrence coming in as a late replacement. Camacho was actually supposed to be fighting Frivola, but he got in a car accident, unfortunately. So hopefully he turns out all right. I'm not really sure of the severity of his injuries, but hopefully it's not too severe, and if it is, hopefully he heals up. But breaking down the fight between these two, Frivola 8-2-1. 3-2-1 in the UFC, 5'9", 71-inch reach, 30 years old. Terrence McKinney 10-3, 0-1 in the UFC, 5'10", 74-inch reach, and 26 years old. This is his UFC return. He was one and done on the Contender Series. He lost that fight. Unfortunately, he never came back. These two guys, I think they're in kind of similar positions. Similar ages. Frivola is only 4 years older. Terrence is a little bit younger, but not too much. But I think I'm going to give this one to Frivola just because Terrence, I don't think he has the experience yet. He is definitely I don't know if I'd say like too much of a hot prospect, but he is kind of a prospect. That 10-3 record, still only 26 years old. Frivola, a little bit better record, a little bit older, so they're kind of in a similar position because, Frivola has the better record, but he is a little bit older, and Terrence, his record's not quite as good, but he is younger, so I think Frivola's experience, though, especially his experience in the UFC, this being his 7th fight in the UFC versus Terrence's 2nd fight in the UFC, I think Frivola is going to get this one done. I think he's going to end up coming out on top. But I do expect this to be a really good scrap, even though, Terrence might not be, I'm not too familiar with him, and I don't think many of the fans are, but, looking at the couple of fights I did watch, he's competitive, so I expect this to be a competitive fight, but I'm going to give it to Frivola. And then, obviously, the women's bantamweight main event of the prelims, or the early prelims, you could say, is Tough 28 finalist Penny Kianzad versus the former number 1 contender Alexis Davis. Kianzad, being born in Iran, now lives in Sweden, represents both countries. Alexis Davis, the Canadian. Breaking down Kianzad, 14-5 record, 3-2 in the UFC, 5'7", 68-inch reach, 29 years old. Alexis Davis, 20-10, 6-5 in the UFC, 5'6", 67-inch reach, 36 years old. This is kind of a weird fight because, on one hand, I think one is that because the women's 135-pound division is so new and there's been so few girls that have been in the division, I look at this fight as the fight for the number 8 female 135-pounder of all time. I might do a video on my list. I have a top 15 list of all the rankings that I'm planning on doing a video against, or eventually, of top 15 all time in the UFC for each of these divisions. Right now, I have Kianzad at number 8, and Alexis Davis is up there as well. I think I have her at number 10 or 11. I can't remember exactly. But I think this is a good fight for that specific reason. This is kind of that fight for that number 8 position of all time. Alexis Davis, obviously being a former title contender, she's moving back up to 135 pounds. She was at 125 for a while. Pani being a Tough 28 finalist, moving down from 145 pounds. This is just an all-around interesting fight. I think Pani will probably get it done. I think she'll end up getting the win. But this is definitely the best fight on the early prelims, at least. Two top girls, two of the best to ever do it in their division. And, I'm really excited to see it. I expect Pani to win it and then possibly go on to do big things. She's still pretty young. She's only 29 years old. And, with 14-5 record, may not sound too impressive, but when you look into it, you see who she fought and when she fought them. She was fighting girls like Sarah Kaufman, very early in her career when she really probably shouldn't have been. So she has losses to girls who, when she was maybe not even ranked in the top 100, she was fighting girls who were top 5. So, definitely the record is I don't know how to put this. The record is not everything, right? Like it's who you fought and when you fought them. So, she's coming into her own. Alexis Davis is kind of starting to fade away, getting older. Doesn't seem to be taking it as seriously as she used to. But I expect this to be a great fight. Both girls come from a grappling background. Kianzad is the national shoot box champion in Sweden, which is shoot box, for those of you who aren't know, is very similar to MMA. It's a Japanese form of fighting, kind of a hybrid of Japanese and American fighting. It's an offshoot of wrestling. It's definitely something worth looking into, but she's a national champion in that. Alexis Davis is obviously a national champion in Jiu-Jitsu in Canada. But yeah, I'm going to go with Kianzad. I think she's going to pull off the victory. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. Tomorrow I will be breaking down the rest of the prelims, the ESPN prelims, all 4 fights. So like, comment, subscribe, and you can see that video tomorrow.